So all of us want happiness and don't want suffering, no matter who we are, what we look like, what we believe. And yet the happiness that each sentient being desires eludes them because our minds are under the influence of ignorance. The ignorance is so deep that we don't realize we're under the influence of ignorance. Instead, we believe everything we think. We believe that everything exists in the way it appears to our sense consciousnesses and our mental consciousness. And so due to that fundamental misapprehension, then we have other distorted conceptions, seeing impermanent things as permanent, unattractive things as beautiful, things that are by nature unsatisfactory as pleasurable, and things that lack a self as having one. And from those distorted conceptions arise our afflictions, anger, attachment, confusion, jealousy, pride, and so on, the 8 dangers and more. And with those operating in our minds, then we act, we create karma. That karma leaves imprints on our mind, karmic seeds. And then when the conditions are suitable, those seeds ripen into our experiences, into the rebirth we take, what we experience in that rebirth, our habitual actions, and even the environment we wind up living in. But most sentient beings are completely ignorant of that whole process. And so on a day-to-day basis, their life is a struggle trying to get happiness from outside and prevent suffering, seeing that also as coming from outside. Not at all thinking that any of this is related to their own mind. So it's quite a tragic situation. And when we understand this well, then compassion arises in us. Compassion for ourselves takes the form of the determination to be free of cyclic existence. Compassion for others takes the form of wishing them to be free of misery, and thus are wanting to become fully awakened Buddhas. So we have the skills and power and wisdom and compassion to be able to bring that about most effectively. So with this kind of perspective on life and this kind of perspective on sentient beings, then let us learn and share the Dharma together today. So when we really start to get an idea of our ignorance, we start to challenge many of our perceptions and conceptions. And so one of those is our relationship with other living beings. Because we tend to divide people into friends, enemies, and strangers, and then get attached to friends, have aversion and distaste, feel threatened by enemies, and then apathetic about everybody else, the strangers that don't influence us one way or another. And so when we look at different people, we think that they have some essence. We think that they exist the way they appear to us. So our parents are inherently our parents. Our children are inherently our children. Brothers and sisters are inherently our siblings. Romantic partners are inherently lovable. Whatever it is, we think that that's someone's intrinsic nature, and that's all they ever have been and all they ever will be. And so we have some kind of relationship with them that manifests in stickiness. Yeah, because they're inherent beings, so are we, and we have this relationship which should be a certain way. And so, especially with dear ones, friends and relatives, then there arises a lot of stickiness. We're very attached to them. Not attached in a healthy way, the way an infant needs to be attached to their mother when they're first born and, know how to relate to people. Not that kind of attachment. But we become attached to them because they seem to fulfill our needs, or they seem to make us happy, or we have some fundamental relationship with them that can never be altered. And so we pick certain people out of the environment, all these sentient beings who equally want to be happy and not have suffering. We pick out a few and we call them mine. My parents, my kids, my siblings, my pets, my loved ones, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my whatever. Everything becomes my. So it feels like there's a real me who has ownership over this other person because they're mine. As soon as something becomes mine, the whole way we relate to it changes. Just by that label. Nothing changes on the outside. Just that label. Just that word, mine, makes the whole relationship change. Okay. Sometimes seeing that is easier with a material object, and then later we look at persons. So with a material object, I like using the example of a car, because people are usually pretty attached to their cars. So either the big SUV that you get when you're younger, and then the red sports car that you get when you enter middle age, and then what do you get when you're older? A golf cart. Yeah. Okay, so actually when you're younger, you usually start off with a bicycle and then a motorcycle and then, you know, a car and we go from there. But we get quite attached to it because the car is not just a vehicle for getting from one place to the other, but the car represents a lot of other things. Okay? It represents freedom. It represents independence. It represents control. It represents monetary success. You get a certain kind of car to show other people what kind of person you are, so your car reflects your status. I had a friend who was a doctor and he had some old beat up car that he was driving, and people did not like that at all. He was supposed to drive a nice, expensive car because he was a doctor. Okay? So, when that car is in the lot of the car dealer, if it gets dented or marred in any way, we don't care. But as soon as we buy it, if it gets dented or scratched, even minusculely, we have a fit. The car is still basically the same, but because there's now the word my attached to the car, everything that happens to it that we didn't care about before now becomes very important. Okay? So it's the same way with people. People come into our lives. We had no idea what was going on with them before. Yeah? Your kids were in a previous life. Who knows who they were and how you related to them in a previous life? Yeah? They could have been your worst enemy. Yeah? The people, that you love so much now were strangers. You didn't care beans about what happened to them. Yeah? But as soon as, when we first meet people, again, not so much attachment. When we start cultivating the word mine, yeah, then the attachment begins and we have ownership over that person. And to some extent, they feel they have ownership over us too. Okay, so then there's a whole lot of expectations. You are my mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, lover, pet cat, pet frog, therefore you should. And there's a whole job description. Yeah? And it's different for each, according to the role. But what's common to all the job descriptions is you should always do what I want. Yeah? You should always do what I want. And you should always love me. We're not quite sure what love means, but they should always love us. Yeah. And then, because, those two conditions, of course, we really haven't sat down and discussed with the other person. Yeah, will you always do what I want you to do? How's that discussion going to go if you ask them? Okay, will you always love me? Now, of course, everybody says yes. Yeah. Yeah, you love somebody every minute of the day. Yeah, you love them when they scream at you. Yeah. What does love somebody mean anyway? Okay, I'm talking about the worldly way we use the word love. What does it mean somebody loves us? Yeah? And what does that really mean? And like I said, first description is they always do what we want. And they always think we're right. And they always think we're the most wonderful thing in the world. Right. Yeah. Do the people you love always think you're the most wonderful thing in the world? Do you always think they're the most wonderful thing in the world? Do you always do what they want? Do they always do what you want? Anyway, as soon as there's the word my or mine, we feel like we have the right to demand that. Yeah. You didn't tell me you loved me today. I must be worthwhile. Okay? So, we get into these sticky relationships with all sorts of expectations that we've never sat down with the other person and talked about and had them sign on the dotted line that they'll do. And then we haven't signed on the dotted line either. Yeah, I guess in a marriage certificate you do, don't you? Yeah? Yeah, prenuptial agreement. Yeah, I love you so much. Let's already plan for the divorce. Yeah, I love you so much. I'll do anything for you except these things are mine. Yeah, I'm not criticizing prenuptial agreements. I think they serve a purpose. It's marriage I have the doubt about. Yeah. 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 As an aside with this, as monastics, we're not to perform marriage ceremonies. When Venerable Wuyan was teaching us about this precept, it's one of the Sangha Vasessas, so it's a serious precept. She said, how many married couples do you know who are happy? And if you put them together and then they're unhappy, they're going to blame you. So, is this really a position that you need to be in? Very interesting conversation. I think the people in the first two rows understand what I'm talking about, and the people in the in the back are thinking I'm nuts. But I was married before I ordained, so I know all about it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, where was I? So, you see, as soon as we talk about marriage, the mind goes off. So, what I'm getting at is the nature of attachment for other people. And as soon as we're attached to some people because they benefit us, then automatically we're going to have people that we don't like, that we call enemies, because they get in the way of our happiness or they get in the way of the happiness of the other people we care about. And so we have attachment on one side, then anger on the other side. Yeah. And so every day, and then of course everybody else we don't really care about as long as they don't get in our way. Yeah, if they get in our way on the road, they instantly go from stranger to enemy. Yeah. If they, help us, if they let us have their parking space, they go from stranger to friend. Huh? Quite interesting, isn't it? But my point is that with this mind that has so many emotions towards other living beings, going up and down, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. Yeah. How in the world are we going to cultivate love from a Buddhist perspective that wants sentient beings to be happy simply because they exist? Because our worldly love wants them to be happy because they benefit me. They're mine. We're trying to move from that to I want you to be happy simply because you exist. Or compassion, I want you to be free of suffering simply because you exist, not because you're mine. So that's a pretty tall order, isn't it? Because we're very entrenched in mine. And again, this is something that we're encouraged by family and society and everything to feel. So what we're trying to do in our spiritual practice is the intensity with which we want one person to be happy. We spread to everybody, so we want them all to be happy in that way. And the lack of expectations that we have on strangers, we want to lack those expectations in our roles with the people that we're close to, that we see every day. Okay? So while we may act differently according to different roles, like I was saying the other day, if you want to light a candle, you don't give the match to a 2-year-old, you give it to an adult. So we don't necessarily treat everybody the same because people are at different levels and there's different, conventional relationships. But in terms of wanting them to be happy and not suffer, we want to get to a point where we can feel that equally towards everybody, no matter how they treat us and no matter what they do. Okay? So that's real unconditional. And that's actually one reason why we can trust the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as refuge, especially the Buddhas, because they feel completely equal love and compassion towards everybody, no matter how we act towards them, no matter who we are. Yeah. Whereas our love is actually quite conditional. And that's why we get in a lot of problems with it when people don't meet the criteria for it. And if you look in your mind, there's usually quite a long checklist. Like I said, the first thing is you do what I want you to do. But look at the rest of the checklist for how somebody needs to behave to be your loved one. Mm-hmm. Quite interesting. Okay, so in the sadhana, we're at the point now of taking the Bodhisattva vow. So we took refuge in the 3 jewels. We confessed our misdeeds because it's going to be hard to have love and compassion for others if we're still, feeling negative towards them because we haven't settled things that happened in the past. And it's going to be difficult to really open our hearts to them if we're filled with guilt and remorse as well. Okay, so we confess, we rejoice in the merits of all beings, because if we're jealous from that of them, again, we're going to have a hard time really wishing them well, as we discovered yesterday. Okay, so we do those. Then it says, I will hold bodhicitta. Okay, so bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a fully awakened being in order to benefit all sentient beings most effectively. So just working for the benefit of all sentient beings is not bodhicitta. Sometimes people end their motivation with, for the benefit of all sentient beings. We say that really quickly because we don't really understand what it means, but we're supposed to say it. But actually, for the benefit of all sentient beings, working for their benefit is not the definition of bodhicitta. We have to want to attain highest awakening for their benefit. Yeah. Because otherwise it's the blind leading the blind. We can wish people well, but if we're overwhelmed by our own ignorance, attachment, and anger, it's going to be difficult for us to really act for their benefit because our benefit counts first. Okay, again, we take refuge until full awakening in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in order to generate bodhicitta. Yeah, so here we're bringing refuge and bodhicitta together again. Yeah, if I really take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and want to become like a Buddha, then I need to generate bodhicitta. Okay? To fulfill the aims of self and others. The aims of ourself are the Dharmakaya, gaining the Buddha's omniscient mind, okay, and the true cessations of a Buddha. So that's our own purpose. Yeah, so it's not that practitioners on the Bodhisattva path don't seek their own awakening or liberation. They do seek it, but they don't seek only that. Okay? Fulfill the aims of others are to gain the form bodies of a Buddha. Because I was saying before that, we can't communicate directly with a Buddha, mind to mind, and so we need to use forms. So they use forms such as they manifest in all these different deities in order to communicate with us. And so we aspire also, when we become a Buddha, to be able to manifest in many different forms, not only as deities, but also as just regular people, appearing as regular people in order to benefit others. Okay, so we're aiming, that's the purpose of others, is for us to be able to appear in these many kinds of manifestations according to the needs of others. Okay, so to fulfill the aims of self and others, I will cultivate the supreme bodhicitta, and towards all sentient beings, my invited guests, I shall act with supreme awakened conduct. Okay, so Shantideva, in engaging in a bodhisattva's deeds, talks about when we have bodhicitta, we invite all sentient beings. It's like inviting all sentient beings to come to a big festival, because we're making the pledge to really work for their benefit. So we're inviting them in because we cherish them so much and want to work for their benefit. So he says, if we're inviting all sentient beings into the field of our love and compassion and altruism and bodhicitta, then when you invite a guest, you have to act properly. Yeah, and so when we take the Bodhisattva ethical restraints, yeah, then we're saying, I have some responsibility towards sentient beings. And so last Friday night, that's what I was going through, some of the auxiliary bodhisattva precepts. And so those are talking about the way we want to train our mind in order to fulfill our responsibility that we voluntarily took on because we have love and compassion for other living beings. Okay, so there are invited guests, and of course, when you invite guests, you want to treat them well. You don't invite them to come and then say, I don't have so much food for you, so I'm going to eat and you get the leftovers. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay. So we're inviting them. So I shall act with supreme awakened conduct. Yeah. So I will keep the bodhisattva ethical restraints because I know that they help me be the kind of person that I want to be. Okay? So whenever we take precepts, whether they're lay precepts, monastic precepts, bodhisattva, tantric precepts, we take them all voluntarily because we know that they will help us become the kind of person that we want to be. Yeah. If we don't trust the precepts to do that, if we don't think that the purpose of taking the precepts is to benefit us, if we feel that they're confining us and they're going to confine us and limit us, and we can't do what we want, then it's better not to take them. Because we'll just be unhappy. And we'll get into all of our rebellious behavior again. Yeah. Thinking that the precepts are like authorities telling us, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then, of course, I'm not going to listen to you. Buddha, you put those precepts on me. You won't let me do this and that. You're squeezing my independence, my autonomy. Yeah, if you feel like that towards the precepts, then don't take them. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. But, the whole idea of taking precepts is you've already thought about things. You've looked at your own life. You know, when I do that, this is the result. You can see it so clearly in your own life. Yeah, when I've done that in the past, this is what's happened. And so you say, I don't want to do that anymore. So the precepts become something that help you not do what you don't want to do, but your afflictions may tempt you to do. Okay? So your precepts become your protection, because then when something comes up, and situations always come up, instead of getting confused and thinking, oh, maybe I should do this. This person wants me to do that. They want me to go here. I should go there. This and this and this. And they want me to do this. And they're asking me to drink. And they're going to think I'm prudish if I don't drink. And my old friends are smoking dope. And I want to be with them. I don't want them to dislike me. And my mother's missing me. And my father wants me to come and take out the garbage. And my son and daughter are crying hysterically because mama's not there. And even my cat, stands by the door whining, meowing because they want me to come home. I need to go do all these things. Somebody wants me to kill the bugs. I need to kill the bugs because I love the person who wants me to kill the bugs. And this person wants me to cheat on my income tax well, it's not cheat. They're asking me just not to declare certain things, or to declare expenses that weren't really my expenses so that the family will have more money and we can go on a nice vacation. And I love these people and I want to benefit them, so I should really do all these things, and I'm so confused but I have these precepts, but I don't know what to do and the precepts won't let me. I'm crazy. Okay, you ever had that mental state? No. Good. So, the idea is when those situations happen, instead of going crazy, you think, when I was clear-minded, I thought about this situation many times. I was clear-minded. I thought about this situation. I reflected on the past. When I had been in similar situations, I had seen that going along with this behavior is counterproductive for myself in the long term and short term. It harms others. When I was clear-minded, I saw all of this. I took a precept, to help me not do what I don't want to do. So here's this external situation that's again pulling at me, but I don't need to go crazy and get confused because I've already decided what to do in those situations. And I decided with a clear mind. I didn't decide when I was all crazy like that. I decided when I had a clear, mind and could see things clearly. So I've decided, I know the precepts are helping me. I just say no. People don't like it. What can I do? I've already seen that if I do that, at the end of the day, it brings harm to them and it brings harm to me. So even if they don't understand, what can I do? Okay? And then there's no confusion. There's none of that craziness. I mean, you saw how crazy I got there. Yeah. There's none of that. It's like I've taken the precept, I've decided I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So then the whole world, has a fit. Once when Venerable Wuyen was teaching us in India, she had us do skits. And so one of the skits that the nuns did was, when we got ordained, and then everybody else in our life, including the personifications of our own guilt, our own attachment, our own wish for success and whatever, came all around us, telling us this, 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 this. Yeah? You were there. Do you remember it? You don't remember that skit? Yeah? Oh, it was a great skit. Yeah? But it really illustrated, what happens. And so you just sit in the middle of that, everybody else telling you what they want you to do. And you just stay quiet. Quiet meaning peaceful and centered in your own life and your own values, your own wisdom. Okay. So you stay centered in that. Because whatever you do, you're never going to make somebody else completely happy. Whatever you do, no matter how much you try and please a worldly sentient being, they will never be happy. Why? Because worldly sentient beings are under the influence of ignorance, anger, attachment, the whole rest of them. You can jump through 10 hoops, do 5 backflips, be an acrobat, spend your life trying to be everything you think they think you should be, and they're still never going to be happy. So better to live according to our ethical principles. Because at the end of the day, then at least we've wound up not harming others. Okay, so when we're talking about the Bodhisattva vow here, yeah, it's that same kind of thing. We've thought about what a bodhisattva does. Yeah, we want to be a bodhisattva. Yeah, or we are a bodhisattva and we don't want to give it up. Yeah, we want to keep going on to full awakening. So we take the Bodhisattva vow. The vow meaning the ethical restraints. The word vow is not a really good translation. Yeah. Samsara actually means like an ethical restraint or an ethical code. Because we say the English word vow, we instant thing, what do you think of? Catholics, don't you? Yeah? Catholics take vows. And a vow in Catholicism, if you break that vow, you know what's going to happen. Okay. In Buddhism, yeah, we take these precepts, they are trainings. They are training our mind. They are guiding our mind. Of course, if we go beyond the perimeters of our precepts, there's going to be adverse things that happen, simply because we've broken our own promises. But the idea of taking precepts is we learn from that, we make amends, and then we become better able to keep the precepts in the future. So the precepts are training. We're always training in them. Yeah. So they are liberating us. They are not confining us. They're liberating us. I mean, if you really want to go out and kill and steal and sleep around and lie, go ahead. It's your choice. I can introduce you to a lot of people who have lived like that, and you can see if you want to become like them. I'm sure you know many people who have done that. See if you want to become like them. Yeah. But at a certain point, maybe we realize, I want to steer my energy in another direction. So I need to train. Yeah, so train means you practice. Practice means you do it many times. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're perfect at the beginning. Anyway, I didn't mean to get into all of that, but I did. But I think it's also important to understand this. Okay, so we've taken the Bodhisattva ethical restraints, and then, so you imagine light, which is the nature of the Bodhisattva precepts, flowing into you from Tara and all the holy beings. And so in this way you renew and reconfirm your Bodhisattva ethical restraints. So, with Bodhisattva ethical restraints, once you've taken them, you take them every morning and evening yourself, by yourself, to renew and reconfirm them. Because again, it's this process of training, imprinting our mind with good seeds. Now, we need to do it over and over and over again. Yeah, it's like learning to type or learning to ride a bicycle. You have to practice it again and again. Okay, then after that we do the four measurables. Pari Rinpoche was suggesting that we do their long form. So that's in the Chenrezig sadhana, if you want to substitute that. But here the four measurables are, again, they're helping us reaffirm how we want to relate to other sentient beings. Yeah. So it's a good thing to spend some time thinking about how do I want to relate to other sentient beings? And how am I now relating to other sentient beings? Yeah. I don't know about you, but there's some gap between how I want to and how I am. So meditating on the four immeasurables is a big help in terms of changing our attitude towards others. And of course, when we change our attitude, then our behavior changes. So may all living beings have happiness in its causes. Note, it does not say to all the living beings that I'm attached to, may they have happiness in its causes. And it does not say to everybody who disagrees with me, may they lack happiness in its causes. Okay? It's may all sentient beings have happiness in its causes. Yeah. Even Donald Trump. Yeah. Even Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden or Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin or, your ex-spouse. Yeah. May they all have happiness in its causes. Yeah, well, just threw that in because I'm never quite sure who somebody hates the most. Yeah. Maybe I should put your mother in there too, your father in there. Yeah, the neighbor, the guys on Wall Street, who blew your money away, whatever it was. Okay. So it's may all living beings have happiness in its causes. Yeah. Why not wish everybody happiness? Yeah. Why, when we're angry, do we say go to hell? Yeah. That will make the person more unhappy. A person who's unhappy will harm others more. So wanting them to go to hell, or wanting them to get run over by a truck, or wanting them to have a taste of their own medicine, or whatever we want for the people that we feel threatened by. Why do we want them to suffer? That's not going to improve their behavior. Punishment does not work. Yeah. Punishment may get somebody to change their behavior for a while, but the motivation for the change is fear. And as soon as they're not afraid, they're going to change their behavior back to what it was before. Yeah, fear is not a good motivation for change. Punishment doesn't work. Okay? But we've all been raised that punishment works. That's what society says. We lock all these people away. Yeah. So imprisoning somebody to protect them from their own negative actions and to protect others from experiencing their out of control actions, that makes sense. Imprisoning is a matter of protecting. But aside from that, punishing, yeah, we build bigger and better prisons, and it makes more people angry, belligerent, and better educated in how to seek revenge and the tools to do it. Or it makes them terribly depressed and unhappy. And we waste, human potential. Okay? So, let's, see, this is the disadvantage of anger is, anger really, we want to punish, don't we? Okay, so the opposite, abandoning punishment does not mean you let other people do what they want. Okay, because like you said, some people have to be protected from themselves. Yeah. And, when you're a parent, you have to help your kids learn how to become wise human beings who can get along with others. So it doesn't mean you let them do what they want, but the way you train them is not through wanting them to suffer. Okay? And so the opposite is not just, your kid is screaming for this and that, and then you give them everything. That does not help your child either. May all living beings be free from suffering and its causes. So that's compassion. Yeah, we have to give up all of our vindictiveness, all of our wish for revenge. Yeah, may all living beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. That means the bliss of liberation, of full awakening. And may all beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So may all living beings in their own mind be free of bias, attachment, and anger, because the bias, attachment, and anger is what fuels their negative actions. So may they have an equal attitude towards everybody so that their own minds can be peaceful and their behavior towards others peaceful. Let's pause here before we go on to see if there's questions or comments.
So you did a really nice job describing for us parents here what doesn't work. And I can confirm I've tried it all and it doesn't work. But I would definitely love you to help describe and frame the stuff that does work really well so that I have a good message that I can continue to reinforce, because sometimes I lose my way in parenting and revert to the give too much and revert to the take too much away or punish too much.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I'm doing okay, but I don't have those precepts to refer back to. And so sometimes I lose my way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard being a parent. And it's the one thing that you can do with no license and no education at all. And it's the hardest job in the world. Yeah, really. I mean, you need a license for your different careers, but being a parent, no license required, and it's very hard. Here again, I would refer you to Marshall's Rosenberg's book. I'm reading one of them right now, and he has a whole chapter about kids. I forget the name of the book. I'll try and bring it in and show it to you. But one thing that he recommends, and that I found with my experience, because I taught young children too, is if you respect them as human beings, you're going to get a lot further than if you're a drill sergeant. So if you talk to kids like they're human beings, instead of just things that you have to make do or make behave in a certain way, and you're interested in them and what they think and how, who their friends are and why they think the way they think, and you're interested in their life and you build a relationship in that way, then you're more sensitive to what their needs are and what their way of thinking is. And then when a conflict arises, if you can show that you understand what they're needing, whether you agree with it or not, just showing that you understand, then they feel heard. And I think that's the biggest thing with anybody. All of us just want to feel heard, that there's space for us to communicate what we feel and somebody can hear it without judging it. Yeah, I think that's basically, at the bottom of all communication. Because if we can't do that, then there's very little actual communication that's going on. So it means really listening, appreciating their concerns. Very often with kids, if a child has a problem, or this goes with adults too. It's the same thing. Somebody has a problem, comes to us with a problem. We either tell them not to be afraid and not to feel that way, or we try and fix it for them. Neither of those things work very well. Yeah. How do you feel when somebody tells you not to feel that way? Yeah, you check out. It's like, hey, you're not hearing me at all. There's no understanding here. So saying, don't be afraid or don't worry about this or whatever, doesn't usually work too well. And then jumping in and trying to fix the problems, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Again, often with people, what they really want is just for somebody to listen and understand. They don't really want us to solve their problems. And yet so often we become Mr. or Ms. Fix-It and give them 10 zillion suggestions about what to do, but they don't really want any advice. Yeah. If we flip the situation, when you go talk to somebody, are you always wanting their advice, or are you wanting them to hear you and empathize with you? Yeah. Just listen, empathize. That does, you have to do that first to have any kind of genuine communication with somebody. So it means listening. And it means often listening to things that we wish they weren't saying. So it requires a great deal of patience, a great deal of fortitude. Yeah. And the ability to just let them know that we're hearing it, and to shut down the fact that we want to tell them, just shut up, you're being such a jerk. That's the big thing we have to suppress. Is the mind that gets so frustrated that we just want to scream at them. Okay. My mother often used to say to me, just wait until you have kids and then you'll understand what I'm going through. So I didn't have any. Yeah. So, yeah. You see, real rebellious. That wasn't the reason I didn't have kids. Okay, so I think like learning to, even when you're, like, don't wait for crisis times to talk to your kids. Just on a regular daily basis, just interact with them. And what are you interested in? And what do you think? And what are your friends saying? And what do you think about this and that? So that when kids think of their parents, they don't think of a drill sergeant. Yeah, because so often I think parents just become drill sergeants. Get up, brush your teeth, eat breakfast. Did you do your homework? No, the dog didn't eat it. Get in the car, we're late for school. They come home. Yeah. Fix dinner, eat dinner, do your homework, get off that device after all. How many times do you need to check Facebook every hour to see what your friends are doing? That's ridiculous. If that's the extent of your conversation with your kids, there's not going to be, when problems arise, there's not going to be a basis for trust to start with. So I think establishing that basis, and then again learning to see what it is that the kid's really concerned about. And I can speak from experience here. When I was a teenager, my chief concerns were what my friends thought of me and my independence and autonomy. Yeah. What were your chief concerns as a teenager? Do I fit in or do I not belong? Who in the world am I? And throughout the whole thing, I'm going to be independent. Yeah. But I'm also I'm going to conform to what it's a crazy time. I'm going to and adults don't stop this either. I'm going to conform in an independent way, or I'm going to be independent in a way that conforms. Okay, because we want to conform so that we'll be like everybody else. But then we also have to assert our independence so that, you know, we don't have to do what other people tell us to do that we don't want to do. Okay? So it starts at teenage years, it continues until the grave. Yeah. I mean, look at your parents. When your parents are old, try and get your parents to stop driving. Yeah, they don't want to be told what to do. So it's kind of the discussions you have with your teenagers, you have with your parents also. Yeah. Don't drive so fast. Remember to turn on the blinker. You know? Don't step on the gas when you mean to step on the brake. Yeah. And then you worry. Yeah. I don't know if you worry more about your parents driving or your teenagers driving. Of course, we're not going to be like our parents, are we? Yeah. We're going to be completely, fine, independent as aged people. Yeah. In excellent health, our mind bright as a star. Yeah. Able to manage our lives totally. Yeah. We won't need any help from anybody. Right? Okay. So, yeah. So does that give you some idea? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about this thing about Potala. Like, do you know why they named His Holiness the Dalai Lama's palaces Potala when he's supposed to be Chenrezig?
Yeah, because Chenrezig and Tara are related. Tara, it's said, was born from one of Chenrezig's tears when he had been trying to liberate all these sentient beings from the lower realms, and the lower realms kept filling up again. So he started crying, and Tara was born from one of his tears. So, so they call Chenrezig's Pure Land Potala, but also Chenrezig lives in Sukhavati with Amitabha. So I guess he has a winter home and a summer home. Yeah, yeah, but he's in Sukhavati as well, or she's in Sukhavati. Yeah, actually, Chenrezig has millions of manifestations all over the place. Yeah, don't think of Chenrezig as, some inherently existent person. Yeah. Hello, is this Sukhavati? I've arrived at your gates. I want to speak with Chenrezig, please. Yeah. Oh, you're Amitabha? You're what's her name? Mahastana Vasaju? I can never pronounce the other bodhisattva's name. Oh, you're her? Sorry, I want to talk to Chenrezig. Yeah. Yeah. As if they're all, inherently existent people.
So I read in one of the books in your library that one of the things that you should accept if you believe in Buddhism, one of the tenets of it was that all emotions are a source of pain, ultimately. I'm wondering if...
Okay, now who said that and what does it mean?
Right. So, I mean, in a sense, it's well, if I try to explain it, I'd just make a mess of it. So I was trying to understand if that book, I think it's called like How You Know You're Not a Buddhist, and it walks through all the things that you should believe if you are a Buddhist. It talks about all the things that Buddhists believe in. So it tries to distill out some of the central tenets. And one of them, it said, was that all emotions are pain. Yeah, it's one of the 4 seals.
Okay. By who? Samsara can say. Okay. So you have these kind of statements are very, very confusing because it leaves you, all notions are what? To be abandoned?
All emotions ultimately are a source of pain.
All emotions are a source of pain. Okay, so one time in one of the Mind and Life dialogues with His Holiness, the topic came up, does the Buddha have emotions? And after a great discussion, we decided, yes, love is an emotion, compassion is emotion. Yeah, so the Buddha has emotions, but there's a difference between disturbing emotions and constructive emotions. So this is where language is very difficult, because somebody says all emotions are pain. Okay? So you have to ask, what is that person defining as emotion? Because if we project our definition of emotion onto that, then it sounds like the way to avoid pain is to become a bump on a log. Yeah. Total withdraw, don't relate. You're doing something this, you're doing that. I don't care. I don't care. You want happiness? I don't care. You want to avoid suffering? I don't care. You know, that's what we get the idea of. But that's certainly not what a Buddha is. I mean, when you look at the Buddhas, are they sitting there like that, like bumps on a log? When you look at your teachers, are they sitting there just... I have complete equanimity. You're beating up, Sam is beating up Joe, and Joe's beating up Susan, and Susan's beating up Don. It's all the same. No difference between samsara and nirvana. That's another one. Samsara and nirvana are equal. So I don't need to get out of samsara. I don't need to try and get to nirvana. I just sit there. You know, that's not Buddhahood. That's not Buddhahood. Come on. Yeah. Buddhas are very busy people. Yeah. Because Buddhas care about others a lot. So do bodhisattvas. They don't just sit there. You know. They have equal-hearted love and concern for everybody and care for everybody. And they're very active in trying to bring about the welfare of others. Okay? So we hear different statements. It's really important we ask what they mean, what the words mean. Yeah. Otherwise we get so confused.
I think the implication in that statement is that if you are happy and you get attached to happy, when happy goes away, there's pain.
Yeah.
And if you are attached to each of these emotions because they arise and you genuinely want to be involved in that emotion, especially if it's a positive one, that the pain comes when that's no longer there. And that's why they say that emotions cause pain or are pain, because you have the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with samsara and nirvana. If you become attached to one or attached to the other,
you can't become, it's not a question of attachment with samsara and nirvana. Okay, if I can build on
sure.
the first thing you said, I think you got it spot on there. But there you were defining, you left emotions as like attachment, anger, things that we consider disturbing emotions. Yeah. And so you're completely correct. As soon as we get involved in those kind of emotions, the result is pain. Yeah. When you have the kind of love and compassion bodhisattvas have, is that painful? Does it end in pain?
No, not when you get to that stage, but when you are coping with life and you're looking for happiness or you're looking for love, and then you identify something as being creating happiness for you or whatever, and you feel that emotion, then everything that you do is you're searching for that emotion again. You're trying to replace that to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And that's impossible until you, of course, attain bodhisattva level, and then you're in pure happiness, which is different.
Yeah. But the love of sentient beings is very different than a bodhisattva's love.
Right.
What sentient beings call love is maybe 10% love and 90% attachment.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why it ends up as being painful. Yeah. So what I'm getting at is we need to define what emotion means in that statement. Yeah, which you did very well. Yeah. In terms of samsara and nirvana, it's not a question if you're attached to one or the other. Because remember, attachment means you've exaggerated the good qualities of something or projected good qualities of something that aren't there. Yeah, nirvana has good qualities. We do not get attached to nirvana. Okay? What the equality of samsara and nirvana means in the scriptures, it means that they're both empty of inherent existence. They are equal in terms of not having an inherently existent essence. That's what equality of samsara and nirvana means. Yeah. I think what you may be referring to is if we get so enraptured with our idea of, I want to become a Buddha, I want to attain nirvana because then I'm going to be somebody, then clearly that's not a genuine spiritual aspiration. Yeah. And that's going to go kerplunk after a while. Okay, but that's not the meaning of the equality of samsara and nirvana. Okay, just to be clear about that. But what you're saying is, on that part, is true. Yeah.
So compassion and love and empathy are emotions. And when I extend those out to someone that's in pain or has tremendous grief, I feel grief for them and with them, and that is a temporary pain. Like when you were describing the people had lost their children, right? That was very, I well up, I just,
Yeah.
So even the Bodhisattva, you say, cried, right? And had tears.
Yeah.
And so
okay. And they talk about bodhisattvas finding other sentient beings' pain unbearable. Yeah. But the difference is that bodhisattvas don't fall into personal distress. Yeah. Very often if somebody that we cherish is in pain, then we're not just having compassion for them, that was wanting them to be free of their pain, but we take on their pain in an unhealthy way that becomes personal distress for ourselves. Okay? That personal distress impedes our being able to help them. Okay? Because we're so occupied with our own distress about what they're feeling that the focus of our mind is no longer on their suffering, it's on our suffering. So when we hear that bodhisattvas can't bear to see living beings suffer, it doesn't mean that they've fallen into personal distress. It means that, that they find it unbearable, and they're going to do something about it because they know something can be done about it, because they care about the other person, not because they're in personal distress themselves. Okay? It's kind of a fine line, to figure out when we feel compassion and when we feel personal distress. Yeah. When you're tearing up, when you hear of, a catastrophic situation, we want those beings to be happy. If we then do something about it, because we know something can be done, even though we know what we do is not going to fix the whole situation entirely, our mind is optimistic and we're involved with compassion. But when we get like, oh, this being is suffering, oh, that's so terrible, I can't stand to see them so unhappy, because their unhappiness is affecting me. Yeah? If they're unhappy and let's say their life is in danger, then how am I going to have financial support? Who's going to support me emotionally? What's going to happen to my life? Am I a good, husband, wife, father, mother? If this person's unhappy, how does that reflect on my goodness or badness? That is the kind of stickiness that is not genuine love. Yeah, and it's not genuine compassion, because the focus is on me, isn't it? Yeah. So it's the whole idea of compassion in Buddhism is quite different than what we usually hear, especially in a Christian culture where if you're compassionate, it means you need to suffer for the other person. Don't you? How do you show your compassion? You hang on a cross and suffer. Does that help the other person? Yeah. I'm not criticizing Jesus here. I'm just talking about when we get into that thing of, if I have any optimism in confront of suffering, something's wrong with me. I've got to be depressed. I've got to be worried. I've got to be fearful. I've got to take it on myself and fall into despair because this person is so miserable and the whole world is in such a state. And then we become completely inoperable. That doesn't help anybody. That's not compassion. That's personal distress. So there's a big difference between these. Yeah? And so we have to look inside and be able to see, when am I going into personal distress And when am I having compassion? And to be able to differentiate those two.
This is exactly the reason that I find the story of Tara's birth so mysterious, because
this story of whose birth?
Of Tara's birth.
Tara's
from
birth,
Chenrezi's tears so mysterious, because it does seem like he reached a breaking point.
It's a story.
But it has no
It's
meaning?
a story. No, what the story is doing is it's that, it's like the same in the Jataka stories, yeah? The stories are told according to how human beings feel emotions. Yeah? So here's Chenrezi, yeah, and he's crying because sentient beings are suffering. When we think of sentient beings suffering, we think of personal distress. Yeah. Chenrezi shows tears because that's the way we as ordinary beings will understand that Chenrezi cares. Yeah? Because that's how we ordinary beings show care, is we cry when somebody we care about is unhappy. Chenrezi, is, if he's crying, it's out of empathy and sympathy, and he's thinking of what he's going to do to go and help. When we cry, we just sit there and cry. No Tara, exactly. Many tears, and none of them become Tara. Yeah? We just cry and we fall apart. And doesn't do the person we're crying for any good. And it makes the people we're around miserable. And we become completely non-functional because all we can do is cry. Okay, yeah, no Tara comes from it. When I think of the meaning of Chenrezi's tears and Tara coming from them, I think of Chenrezi's fervent compassion being displayed as tears, and his resolve to benefit sentient beings manifesting as Tara out of those tears. Yeah. So Chenrezi doesn't sit there and cry. Yeah. Tara comes, goes out and does something. Okay? Make more sense? Yeah. Yeah. These stories, sometimes the stories we hear in the scriptures, we really have to think exactly what the purpose is of the story. Otherwise, we get the whole wrong idea. Like when you read in the Jataka tales of the Buddha in a previous life, giving away his wife and his son and his daughter to the demons as a display of his generosity. And we read this and say, that's what a bodhisattva does. They give away their husband, their spouse and their kids to the demons. No thank you. I don't want to be a bodhisattva. Yeah. And why is it always a male bodhisattva giving away his wife? Yeah. Yeah. Why isn't it ever a female bodhisattva giving away her husband? So, yeah. So we often don't understand these stories correctly. Yeah. The meaning of that kind of story is you care so much about being generous, about creating merit, about following the path to Buddhahood, that you're willing to give up the attachment to the people you're most attached to. Okay? That's the meaning of the story. You're willing to give up the attachment. Yeah. It isn't, yeah, go ahead, demon, here they are. Yeah, it doesn't mean that. So there's also with analogies in the scriptures, not everything in an analogy conforms with the thing that you're supposed to analogize. Okay? So we have to be very careful with these things.